momentary gap in the 34-mile-an-hour winds. So I'm going to try and get in my steps while I still can, and I'm taking you with me. What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OG GM, coming to you live from the lovely Site B on this windy Wednesday fire weather afternoon. If it wasn't for the weather, it would be a gorgeous autumn or spring day. But whatever. Okay, it's been a weird, wacky, depressing, and kind of scary day. So I think it's time to dust off the ancient tomb of ridiculousness and share another classic tabletop role-playing game horror story from my 40-some-odd year career. And this goes back to the very early days, the first or second year of my 9-year-long campaign at Seth Games and Anime, running Green Ronin's Freeport setting and Freeport adjacent stuff. This is towards the very beginning of the very first module of the Freeport trilogy that we barely followed. But yeah, I don't remember specific names, but I do remember what happened. So if you're not familiar with the long version of the Freeport story, I'm not going to go into it. That would be a separate blog. But let's just say that the player characters had found themselves in possession of an item. And this item was very important to the good guys, and it was also very important to the bad guys. But they had no way to be sure this item was the real item in question. It could have been a fake. It was in the bad guy's hands long enough that there was a question. So the good guys said, let's send out for an expert from the Temple of Knowledge who really knows what this thing is and can prove without a shadow of a doubt this thing is what it is supposed to be, because it's very important to an upcoming event. So the call goes out to the Temple of Knowledge to get this expert to come over. And the expert has to cross the ocean to come to Freeport, because Freeport's on an island. You know, it's this little pirate city with dreams of greatness. So the Temple of Knowledge loads their expert on the boat, sends him to Freeport. Player characters know he's coming. The good guys know he's coming. And yet, somehow, between the time he arrives at dock and the time the player characters get on the boat to escort him, he's been kidnapped. Being kidnapped is a running theme of this adventure. It starts with a kidnapping, and there's like 37 different kidnappings. The cult of madness, the bad guys, rely on kidnapping a lot. Now, you would think with a name like the Cult of Madness, a lot of their plans weren't 100% fully thought out. This was a cult dedicated to insanity and chaos, after all. So, yeah, a lot of the things they did, like, why would they do that? So, the guy gets kidnapped, which by now the player should have expected, as it does seem to be a running theme with the Cult of Madness. So they begin the investigation to track out where the Cult of Madness has taken the kidnapped guy. And through intimidation and streetwise and investigating and sheer dumb player character luck, they discover the latest hideout for the Cult of Madness. And they know that somewhere in this mini dungeon, there's no big dungeons in this adventure, there's lots of little mini dungeons. It is not a dungeon crawling adventure because it takes place in a city. So there's only so many ways you can do dungeons, that link to sewers or whatever. But so, this is maybe a 2-level, 10-room dungeon, but it's got cultists in there. It's got some kind of monster. I think it was a chimera or a wyvern or something like that, or a manticore. The Cult of Madness had a lot of chaotic monsters to go with their theory. So they had a lot of chimeras. They really liked manticores. So if I remember correctly, it was probably manticore, because manticores had the crossbow bolt range thing, and half lion, half dragon. whatever. So the player characters didn't want to go in directly. They felt that because some of the members were missing, they didn't have the wherewithal to do a direct onslaught, or so they were looking for other options. Now, earlier in the game, they had come into the possession of a crystal ball, but the crystal ball had a spirit tied to it, and that's how it got its answers. The spirit would basically go out, get the answers related to the crystal ball, and bring them back. So it wasn't as accurate as a full-on crystal ball, but it was anything they got was based upon the spirit's perception and what the spirit did or did not want to tell them. But there was a caveat that if they released the creature trapped in the crystal ball, it had to perform one final task for them before it could go. So they decided to release the creature that was trapped inside the crystal ball and have it go into the hideout and retrieve the kidnapped NPC. So they break the crystal ball, the demon spirit, dragon spirit, I don't remember what it was exactly, but I know it was, it was tough enough that it could go down there and definitely do some damage. And they tell it its command, what do you want? What is my final command? And they say, go down there and kill everybody but the gnome. And the spirit replies, go down there, kill everybody but the gnome. That is my final command. Yes. So the spirit rushes into the hideout. I roll some dice behind the counter. They're all pins and needles. What's going to go on? If somebody comes running out, they jump that guy, and eventually, sometime later, the noise, the chaos, the screaming ends. And the spirit comes out saying, I'm done. And they go, did you kill everybody? And the spirit goes, yes, I killed everybody except for the gnome. All right, where's the gnome? The spirit goes, what gnome? And disappears. The player characters are aghast. They go down. They can't find a living or dead gnome. Of course, they take all the stuff. They go back to the Temple of Knowledge, and they go, we don't understand. We went to rescue the gnome, and he wasn't there. There was just a bunch of dead bodies. And both I, as me, and you can see where this is going, right? Both I, as OGGM, and as their contact in the Temple of Knowledge, look at them ashen-faced with this utter look at shock and go, we never said he was a gnome. And the players just go, what? So they killed the guy. The demon went down, killed everybody that wasn't a gnome. The Temple of Knowledge guy wasn't a gnome, so they killed him too. and then they come back and they're like, well, we killed everybody except for the gnome. And the temple is just going, what gnome? We never told you he was a gnome. And I don't know how they got gnome out of it, other than, well, it's a priest of knowledge. It's probably a gnome, or because one of the other NPCs was a gnome. So they had gnome in their brains, and they associated gnomes with the Temple of Knowledge. So I guess they just assumed that the priest that was kidnapped was a gnome, which I guess makes sense in hindsight in their defense. They never bothered to ask what the guy looked like. They didn't really know his name. I was like, what's his name? Is Peter or Sebastian or something? I don't remember. you know, if they didn't have a code word, they just went in typical player character fashion, rushing in, and that's what happened. So obviously, between the laughter and the, oh my god, what did we just do, they have to come up with another solution, because the whole reason that this guy was there was to authenticate the MacGuffin. Well, this guy can't authenticate the MacGuffin, and they needed the MacGuffin verified for this big diplomatic thing that was going to happen either that day or within the week. They had, you know, they knew that these really, really important dudes were going to show up, and they were supposed to hand the MacGuffin over to them, right? It was like the changing of the keys kind of thing. This event that only happens every few years. So these big uppity-ups were going to show up at Freeport. They were going to expect to be presented the MacGuffin for their turn, and Freeport didn't have it. I mean, they had it, they didn't know if it was real. Now they had no way to confirm if they had the real MacGuffin, or if the real MacGuffin was still in the hands of the bad guys. And if it was still in the hands of the Cult of Madness, how dangerous could it be? So, you know, obviously, let's have our NPC Paladin, whose player is occasionally here, since he's a member of this other side, the mainlanders, the guys who are getting the MacGuffin, just tell them everything's okay and hand them the fake one and hope they don't notice the difference. They should trust him. He's a respected member of their paladin group, right? So this is the basic plan they can get. Meanwhile, they're going through the records and they're researching and they're trying to track down the Cult of Madness to see if they can find out, you know, and there's some other side questy things they have to do, and, you know, but basically that chapter ends with this big diplomatic hullabaloo, right? It takes place in this huge glass cathedral that's only open for this ceremony. It's got all the important political doodads out from every corner of Freeport, from the, you know, the high sea lord of Freeport down to the pirate captains who people actually acknowledge, from the guy, the Thieves Guild guy. Everybody is important, and this retinue of, you know, paladins from Hexgard, the lawful good kingdom on the mainland, show up for the exchange. Give us the MacGuffin, we hold on to the MacGuffin for another, you know, 4 years, 5 years, thus facilitating the continued peace between the mainland and this little teeny island of chaotic pirates. You know, we've accepted your donation, we will turn the other way. You leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. Right? So they have to go and get all dressed up and get fancied up, and they have to make sure that all their stories are aligned. And you know, that session is coming to an end. We're going to start the next session with the big ball, and I know there's a big fight that's supposed to happen in the ball, because of course there is. So they have a week to prepare, and I was like, yeah, okay guys, you have a week to prepare, communicate with each other on the Facebook group, because back then we had Facebook groups. You know, ask me any questions, and we'll just start with 20 minutes of pre-planning, and then exactly at 6 on my clock, 6 o'clock at the game, the event will start. So, you know, we started around 5:30, we all had our snacks and whatever. I give them a half an hour to come up with their plan. Their plan is still, we don't really know anything else. We don't really know if this is or is not the MacGuffin. Best thing to do for now, hand the fake off to the NPCs while we continue to look for the real one, and hope the Cult of Madness doesn't have anybody on the inside to inform them or to blow this, and hope that the NPC paladin, whose player was there this game, doesn't do something lawful good paladinish, like tell the truth. So they decide just to, you know, they cast the spell that makes not magic items look like magic items, audible glamour or whatever it's called. I don't know. Basically, they want to be sure that if detect magic is cast on this thing, it radiates magic. Of course it already was, but they wanted to be double sure. Player characters, right? So all this, they hand it to the NPC paladin whose player is there that game, and they go, Jack Marshall, paladin of Hexworth, do your thing. So they're all there dressed up. Aaron's little goblin character is, you know, trying not to start, you know, pickpocketing people and be chaotic and get in a fight with the NPC kobold over the food. That lasts for about 2 minutes, and then they're already planning to start pickpocketing and stealing food and stuff. So I'm getting notes from Aaron's player, you know, about how he wants to cash in his one of his scrolls, and talking about how let's go steal the food, let's steal the silverware, no one's gonna. So that's going on. The paladins come in. At this point, after an entire week in a game, one of the players, who is definitely one of those players that when he is dialed in, was dialed in. Like, he was one of those players that always made me think, because he would outthink me 9 out of 10 times. So just as the NPC PC paladin is walking with the MacGuffin in his hands, and the retinue of paladins from Hexwork are walking to accept the transaction, this guy goes, wait a sec, how did they know the priest was on the boat unless someone told them? Oh no, is there someone on the inside working for the Cult of Madness? Of course there is. Which means there's someone on the inside right now at this event who very well could screw things up. So Jackson Marshall is just about to hand the thing over to him. They've got, you know, all the little spells going on. So they say, can you assure us that this is the artifact that you were handed by the royal court? Well, that's true, because that was the artifact that Jackson was handed. So he says, yes, this is what I got from them. And then they say, you know, did they, you know, chain of custody, did they get the artifact from the Temple of Knowledge? Well, that's true. Yes, they did get the artifact from the Temple of Knowledge. It's chain of custody, Temple of Knowledge, 2 player characters, to Jackson Marshall, to the NPC paladin. So far, Jackson is in the clear. Is this the artifact that we left here 4 years ago? Remember, paladin is not supposed to tell a lie, but it doesn't mean he has to tell the whole truth. He can fudge within the limitations of tell no lie. As far as I know, having never seen the original. He hands it off. The guy who realized what's going on goes, wait a sec. Somebody in the crowd goes, what do you mean the original? The paladins stop. Lights go out. Sound of glass breaking. So you see, what happened is Jackson Marshall said, as far as I know, I never saw the original. Which means this is not the original, which the NPC bad guy said, wait a sec, triggering the scripted event. Glass breaks, the Cult of Madness comes in. It's a major fight. They think, all the players think, oh, well, we've got all these high-level paladins here. We're okay. We don't have to do shit. Nope. All those high-level paladins were purely decorational diplomats. None of them was above 2nd level. There was one 3rd level commander. But they were all 1st and 2nd level diplomats. They weren't paladins. They weren't 18th level fighters. They weren't anybody. They were ambassadors whose job it was to look good, intimidate Freeport, get the MacGuffin, come home. So, of course, they get slaughtered. The 3rd level commander is fighting demons. The player characters who don't have their armor, don't have much of their gear because they had to come in dressed for things, are trying their best to survive and rescue as many people as they can and try and figure out who the traitor was. All the while, Aaron's little goblin and the NPC kobold are robbing the place blind. Running around, stealing food, stealing silverware, stealing magic items and stuff off of people as they go down. They don't care if it's friend or foe. It's dark. I take his stuff. Now, fortunately, Aaron had the thing that wherever he took something, he'd leave something behind. So he would like take a +1 dagger and leave behind the $25,000 gold piece or $25,000 gem, because he felt that was fair, right? And I never told him the value, because it's a goblin. What would he know, right? His little goblin half-dragon thing. So he takes things off of bodies, he leaves something behind. He takes things, he leaves something behind. He takes things, he leaves something behind, right? Everybody's yelling at Jackson, why did you say the original? He's like, I can't lie. I never did see the original. So there you go. There is another D&D horror story, D&D comedy story. I hope you get as much laughter out of it as I did when it happened. I mean, still, it's one of those things that just sticks in your mind. One of those ashen-faced, cold readings, everybody at the table at the exact same time realizing, I never said it was a gnome. And then again, how did they know he was on the boat? And just, you know, the realization, that's the best part, right? Any game master's arsenal is when you can get them to outthink themselves, when you can get them to be their own worst enemies, and then when you can drop the curtain and have them realize, oops, we just killed the priest. So that's this week's D&D horror story. Shout out to Jackson, shout out to Aaron, shout out to Casey, shout out to Tristan, shout out to the players in my 9-year-long Freeport campaign, especially Aaron. And we'll do this again the next time it's a bad day and you all need something to be happy about. Let me know if you appreciate these D&D horror stories. If you do, I'll do it again. Until next time, stay safe out there. I will talk to you soon.